Welcome to the Hidden Truth. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss a secret. My name is Samuel Reed. I'm 58 years old, and up until last Monday, I served as the operations director at Colton Industrial Systems, a mid-sized manufacturing company in Cincinnati, Ohio. 18 years of dedication, growth, and loyalty, wiped away in a 15-minute meeting. We're moving in a different direction, said Madison Colton, the new CEO, with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Fresh leadership for a new era. It didn't matter that I'd been personally selected by her father, Richard Colton, the man who founded the company with little more than a second-hand lathe and a dream. It didn't matter that I'd carried the weight of operations through recessions, expansions, and a global pandemic. None of it mattered. To Madison, I was a relic. I simply nodded. I wasn't the type to beg or plead. My time was over, or so they thought. Packing up my office was a surreal experience. The photos of my kids' graduations, the plaque honoring me for exemplary service, the countless notebooks filled with system improvements, all went into a battered cardboard box. Around me, younger employees, many of whom I'd mentored, kept their heads down, afraid to make eye contact. I couldn't blame them. Fear trickles down quickly in corporations. As I walked out of the building for the last time, I felt oddly at peace. Because what Madison Colton didn't know, what her newly minted executive team failed to realize, was that I hadn't built the infrastructure of Colton Industrial Systems to be easily replaceable. No, I had built it to be resilient. And deeply dependent on the knowledge they had just dismissed. I placed the box gently in the back seat of my car and sat behind the wheel, staring up at the glass facade of a company I had helped turn into a regional powerhouse. I smiled, a genuine smile. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Driving home, I called Angela Martin, a close friend and experienced employment attorney. Angela had always said, half-jokingly, "One day, you're going to need me." That day had come. "Get everything in writing," she said after I explained the situation. "Severance, reason for termination, your contract. We'll need it all." "Already done," I replied. Years of meticulous habit had trained me to document everything. Every promotion letter, every performance evaluation, every commendation. And most importantly, my current employment contract, which contained a golden parachute clause Richard Colton himself had insisted upon years ago. If terminated without documented cause, I was entitled to 2 full years' salary and benefits. I doubted Madison had bothered to read the fine print. The next morning, sitting at my kitchen table with a strong cup of coffee, I reviewed my materials. Claire, my wife of 32 years, sat across from me, quiet but supportive. "You going to fight it?" she asked. "Not fight," I said thoughtfully. "Educate." She smiled knowingly. Together, we built a plan. By Wednesday, my lawyer had formally contacted Colton Industrial Systems. Madison's assistant responded with a terse email offering a standard severance package, 6 months' salary if I signed a non-disparagement agreement. Angela chuckled when she read it. "Amateurs," she said. "Let's educate them." She drafted a letter citing my contractual rights, attaching scanned copies of the signed agreements. Clear. Professional. Unassailable. I had done nothing to warrant termination for cause. No documented infractions. No warnings. Just a different direction. Legally, they were trapped. The next day, Madison herself called me. "Samuel," she said, her voice tight. "There must be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I replied calmly. "Just enforcing the agreement your father put in place." She was silent for a moment, then offered an apology that sounded rehearsed. "Our legal team will review everything," she said finally. "I'll expect confirmation by Monday," I said and ended the call. Claire walked into the room, raising an eyebrow. "Progress?" "They're scrambling," I said. "And that's just the beginning." While Angela handled the legal side, I focused on something even more critical: opportunity. I reached out to Michael Brennan, owner of Titan Components, a rising competitor in the manufacturing sector. Michael had been trying to lure me away from Colton for years. Still interested? I asked when he answered. Absolutely, he said without hesitation. Name your terms. We set a meeting for the following week. But this wasn't just about a job. It was about building something new, something better. Something Madison and her boardroom clique would eventually see in their rearview mirrors, a reflection of what they had lost when they let go of experience for the illusion of modernization. By Friday, Angela had finalized the settlement, full payment of my severance, benefits extended for 2 years, and no non-compete clause. Victory, clean and silent. Claire and I celebrated with a simple dinner. No champagne. No fanfare. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that resilience and preparation had, once again, outlasted arrogance. As we sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight, Claire squeezed my hand. You always said it wasn't about climbing ladders, she said. It was about building strong foundations. Still is, I replied. And somewhere deep inside I knew. This wasn't an ending. It was a new beginning. A better one. One they would never see coming. The following Monday dawned cool and gray, the kind of spring morning that hinted at storms on the horizon. I sat at my kitchen table, a steaming mug of black coffee beside me, laptop open, and a blank document waiting to be filled. This wasn't going to be a simple job search. No, what I was building would be deliberate, methodical, and crafted with the kind of care only decades of experience could bring. I wasn't interested in revenge for its own sake. That would be petty. I wanted to create something that would thrive precisely because it valued everything Colton Industrial Systems had abandoned: wisdom, loyalty, craftsmanship. Titan Components was the obvious choice. Michael Brennan had vision and ambition. But before I tied myself to any existing entity, I needed to assess the full battlefield. I made a list. Not a list of grievances. That would have been endless. No, I listed the assets Madison Colton had squandered when she pushed me and others out the door. First, people. Names of experienced engineers, project managers, system analysts who had grown disillusioned over the past year under Madison's leadership. Some had already left. Others, I was certain, would follow the right leader. Second, processes. The systems I'd developed over nearly 2 decades were complex, nuanced, and barely documented in ways outsiders could understand. I had created the institutional memory of Colton Industrial Systems, and they had severed their access to it. Third, clients. Relationships forged over years of honest dealings, on-time deliveries, and nights spent on factory floors solving problems that would have sunk multi-million-dollar contracts if left unattended. Those relationships had names, faces, histories. I wasn't going to poach. But I was going to remind them who had been the real foundation of reliability at Colton. By noon, I had a working plan. I emailed Michael Brennan. Michael. Looking forward to our meeting. I have ideas I believe could benefit both of us, not just in terms of hiring me, but in expanding Titan Components' position in the market. Best. Sam. He replied within minutes. Sam. Let's not waste time. I want to hear everything. See you Wednesday at 10. Claire found me still at the table when she returned from errands, a bag of groceries in one hand. You look like a man plotting a heist, she joked. Not a heist, I said, smiling. A resurrection. Tuesday, I spent reconnecting. I started with people I trusted most, those who would understand discretion. I called Thomas McClellan, a senior engineer who'd been with Colton even longer than I had. Sam? He answered, surprise evident. Got a few minutes? I asked. For you? Always. We met for lunch at a little diner off the interstate, the kind of place where truckers outnumbered suits. Thomas looked older, more worn than I remembered. Stress, undoubtedly. Madison's reign hadn't been kind to those who still cared about quality. Over greasy cheeseburgers and bottomless coffee, I laid out my vision. His eyes lit up halfway through. You're serious, he said. Dead serious, I replied. But only if you're in. He didn't hesitate. Count me in. One by one, the calls continued. Elaine in project management. Luis from the fabrication department. Jordan, one of our best system architects. Each had a story of frustration. Each wanted out. Each agreed to stay in touch, quietly. By evening I had a nucleus, the core of something new. Wednesday came bright and early. I arrived at Titan Components headquarters precisely at 9:45 a.m. professional courtesy. Michael met me in the lobby, grinning like a man who just won the lottery. Sam Reed in the flesh, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Let's talk. His office was large but functional, the opposite of the sterile showrooms Madison had begun favoring. Over the next 2 hours, I outlined my proposal. Not just hiring me. Building a new division within Titan, one focused on bespoke manufacturing solutions, high precision, high margin contracts that Colton had been too short-sighted to pursue. You won't just gain market share, I said. You'll redefine it. Michael listened intently, asking sharp, smart questions. He understood the opportunity. He saw what I saw: Colton Industrial Systems vulnerable, exposed, bleeding talent, and teetering toward mediocrity. You're not just pitching me a department, he said finally. You're pitching me a revolution. Exactly, I said. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Let's build it. And just like that, the next chapter began. Thursday and Friday were a blur of meetings, planning sessions, and legal consultations. Michael moved quickly, setting up the framework for the new division, which we dubbed Pinnacle Solutions. Because we don't aim for average, Michael said. We aim for the top. By week's end, we had office space secured, funding allocated, and preliminary offers drafted for my core team. Meanwhile, word inside Colton Industrial Systems had begun to shift. I heard whispers through back channels: production issues, missed deadlines, rising client complaints. Without the experienced hands, Madison's new regime was struggling. But worse was yet to come. Because a company isn't just bricks and machines. It's people. And people were beginning to remember who had made things work before everything started unraveling. That weekend, Claire and I drove out to a quiet lakeside cabin we used to rent when the kids were younger. We needed the space, the silence, to breathe and think. One evening, sitting by a crackling fire, Claire looked at me thoughtfully. You know, she said, this was never really about getting even, was it? No, I said, watching embers drift into the dark sky. It's about proving that building things right, people, processes, principles, still matters. She nodded, understanding deeper than words. We sat there in comfortable silence, two souls who had weathered storms before and knew how to survive the shifting winds of change. When we returned Monday morning, the real work began. Recruitment meetings. Supplier negotiations. Branding strategy. Every detail mattered. Every step forward needed to be built on the bedrock of integrity and excellence that Madison had so casually discarded. Pinnacle Solutions wasn't just a business plan. It was a mission statement written in blood, sweat, and quiet fury. And as the days grew longer, and the gears of industry began to turn in our favor, I could feel it in my bones. A reckoning was coming. Not a petty revenge. A demonstration. A reminder that some foundations, the ones built with patience, principle, and passion, can't be bulldozed by arrogance. They endure. They thrive. And they rise higher than anyone dares to expect. The last days of April bled into May with a rhythm that felt almost electric. Every morning, I awoke before dawn, my mind already buzzing with strategies, meetings, contingencies. Pinnacle Solutions wasn't merely an idea anymore. It was becoming tangible, a living thing molded by the hands of people who had been discarded and underestimated. The first official hires signed their contracts by the second Monday of May. Thomas McClellan, Elaine, Luis, and Jordan walked into our rented office space with the wary hope of survivors stepping onto dry land after a shipwreck. There were no grand speeches, no obligatory HR orientations. Just handshakes, backslaps, and a collective sense of mission. We got to work immediately. Each member of the team had a domain to oversee: Thomas on product engineering, Elaine on project operations, Luis running fabrication processes, and Jordan setting up our IT infrastructure. I floated between them all, guiding when needed, trusting them when it wasn't. What made it work wasn't just our collective experience. It was the knowledge that we had something to prove. And nothing to lose. Our first major project came sooner than expected. Titan Components had landed a contract with Hamilton Dynamics, a multinational firm looking for a specialized series of industrial hydraulic units, customized for Arctic oil rigs. Precision. Durability. Innovation. It was the kind of project Colton Industrial Systems would have dismissed as too niche under Madison's reign. Michael Brennan called me into his office late one afternoon. "Can Pinnacle handle this?" he asked, sliding a thick project dossier across the desk. I didn't even need to open it. "Absolutely," I said. He grinned. "Good. Because they're asking for a full proposal in 10 days. 10 days. Under normal circumstances, it would be suicidal. But we weren't normal. We were hungry." I walked back into our open concept workspace, dropped the file onto a central table, and gathered the team. "We've got our first mountain," I said. They leaned in, eager. "Let's climb." Those 10 days became a blur of motion. Thomas worked late into the night refining schematics. Elaine built a project management timeline so efficient it belonged in textbooks. Louise coordinated with suppliers, squeezing faster turnaround times from vendors by sheer force of reputation. Jordan locked down our internal systems tighter than a bank vault. I coordinated it all, ensuring no bottlenecks formed, no details slipped. I barely slept. Neither did the team. But when the proposal went out, it was a thing of beauty, precise, innovative, and grounded in a deep understanding of both engineering and operational realities. Michael Brennan called us into a conference room 3 days later, grinning ear to ear. "Hamilton Dynamics accepted," he said. Cheers erupted. This wasn't just a contract. It was validation. We had arrived. Meanwhile, back at Colton Industrial Systems, the cracks continued to widen. Whispers reached us through the grapevine. Madison had initiated a rushed modernization program, gutting traditional manufacturing lines in favor of flashy new systems no one knew how to operate properly. Downtime surged. Customer complaints mounted. Worse, a key logistics partner had pulled out after a series of late deliveries. It was happening faster than even I had anticipated. One Friday evening, over beers at a local bar, Thomas chuckled grimly. "She thought we were the past," he said, raising his glass. "Turns out we were the engine." We clinked glasses without another word. By June, Pinnacle Solutions had expanded to 20 employees. Most came from backgrounds similar to ours, veterans of industries who had been overlooked, laid off, or marginalized in favor of cheaper, flashier talent. We built a culture around respect. Around competence. No endless meetings. No meaningless jargon. Just work, craftsmanship, and pride. Clients noticed. By the end of the month, 2 more contracts came our way, both former clients of Colton Industrial Systems who, through no encouragement from us, had grown disillusioned with Madison's leadership. Each new project brought more fuel. Each success was a nail in the coffin of the arrogance that had discarded us. But even as we climbed higher, I made sure we stayed grounded. "We don't celebrate Colton's failures," I reminded the team during one meeting. "We celebrate our victories. Our standards. Our future." They nodded, understanding. Because true success isn't about burning bridges. It's about building higher ones. In early July, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. From Richard Colton himself. "Sam, I've been hearing good things about your new venture. I'm proud of you. Would you have time for a conversation?" I stared at the screen for a long moment. Richard. The man who had once built something great, only to see it handed over to someone who didn't understand what it meant to lead. Part of me hesitated. Old loyalties ran deep. But in the end I replied, "Of course. named the time and place. 2 days later, we met at a quiet steakhouse outside the city. Richard looked older, friendlier than when I'd last seen him, but his handshake was still firm, his eyes still sharp. We ordered, made small talk, but it didn't take long to reach the heart of the matter. "I made a mistake, Sam," he said, his voice low. "Handing the company to Madison without preparing her properly." I said nothing. What could I say that wouldn't wound deeper? He sighed. "I should have listened more. Seen more." He leaned forward. "I'm stepping back in," he said. "The board's had enough. They're looking for solutions. Real ones." I waited. "Would you be willing to consult?" It was tempting. But my path was already set. "Richard," I said carefully, "I'm building something new. Something I believe in." He nodded, no anger in his eyes. "Then maybe," he said, "we'll just have to find ways to collaborate." We toasted to that. Two men who knew that real craftsmanship, real leadership, wasn't about legacy alone. It was about honoring the past while building the future. Driving home that night, I felt a deep, abiding sense of peace. I hadn't burned down Colton Industrial Systems. They had done that themselves. I had simply built an alternative, a lighthouse for those lost in the storm. And the light was only growing stronger. The sparks of defiance had ignited something far bigger than any single company. They had ignited a movement. A reminder. That experience still mattered. That principle still mattered. And that sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's excellence. July's heavy heat weighed down the city, but inside the walls of Pinnacle Solutions, the atmosphere crackled with energy. Every desk was occupied, every conference room alive with brainstorming sessions, CAD models projected on walls, logistics schedules being fine-tuned to the minute. By mid-July, the results were undeniable. Our project for Hamilton Dynamics was not only on track, it was exceeding expectations. Their representatives visited our modest headquarters and left visibly impressed, especially with the no-nonsense approach our teams brought to every detail. Word spread quickly. Suddenly, suppliers who had once reserved their best materials for Colton Industrial Systems began calling us instead. Industry publications started mentioning Pinnacle Solutions in passing, noting, "A promising new player led by seasoned veterans." Michael Brennan and I met twice a week to review progress and plan expansions. We agreed on one critical point: growth would not come at the expense of quality. "Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast," I reminded the team in meetings. We would build carefully, sustainably, resisting the urge to overextend. Meanwhile, the implosion of Colton Industrial Systems accelerated. Anonymous reports surfaced, mass layoffs, spiraling defect rates, cancelled orders. Madison's decision to prioritize modernization over experience had gutted the core that made Colton a trusted name. One afternoon, while reviewing blueprints for an aerospace contract we were pursuing, Thomas walked into my office, newspaper in hand. "You should see this," he said, tossing it onto my desk. On the front page, "Leadership crisis at Colton Industrial. Shareholders demand changes." I read it twice, slowly. According to the article, Richard Colton had convened an emergency board meeting scheduled for early August. Rumors hinted he would propose removing Madison as CEO. "Think she'll fight it?" Thomas asked. "Of course," I said, folding the paper. "Arrogance never concedes quietly." As July turned into August, the tension in the local business community became palpable. I received calls from headhunters, from old colleagues, even from anonymous numbers hinting that opportunities might be available if I returned to Colton Industrial. Each time, I politely declined. My path was set. One evening, as Claire and I took a long walk through the park near our home, she squeezed my hand. "They need you," she said simply. "Maybe," I replied. "But they had me once. And they threw it away." She nodded, understanding better than anyone how much loyalty meant to me, and how deeply its betrayal had cut. August 3rd arrived, and with it, the emergency meeting of Colton Industrial Systems Board. Through carefully placed sources, I learned that Richard presented a scathing report on the company's decline under Madison's leadership. Key clients lost. Revenues down 24%. Employee turnover at an all-time high. He didn't advocate for scorched-earth solutions. Instead, he proposed a lifeline, bringing back seasoned leadership, rebuilding trust, restoring the values that had once made Colton great. But Madison, true to form, refused to step down. The board voted anyway. A narrow majority ousted her. The news broke the next morning. Business headlines exploded. Colton Industrial Systems ousts CEO amid crisis. Founder Richard Colton returns to salvage company. The same morning, I received a short, formal email from Richard. Sam. We need to meet. Urgently. Please let me know when you're available. I stared at it for a long while. Finally, I replied. Richard. I'm available tomorrow at 10 a.m. At Pinnacle. If he wanted my help, he would come to me. On my terms. The next morning, Richard Colton walked through the doors of Pinnacle Solutions. He looked different, older, wearier, but determined. Michael greeted him warmly, then left us alone in my office. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Richard laid it out plainly. The company was bleeding. He needed experienced hands to help stabilize operations, restore client confidence, rebuild the workforce. You're the only one who can do it, Sam, he said. I shook my head slowly. I can help, I said carefully. But I won't return to Colton Industrial Systems. He looked surprised. However, I continued, I propose a strategic partnership. Pinnacle Solutions remains independent, but we contract with Colton to lead specific recovery projects. No bureaucracy. Full operational control. Results-based compensation. Richard thought about it for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Deal. We shook on it, two men who understood that rebuilding trust required more than words. It required action. The next few weeks moved at a breakneck pace. Pinnacle teams embedded within Colton Industrial Systems, quietly but efficiently re-establishing standards, retraining workers, restoring discipline to production lines. Clients noticed almost immediately. Quality improved. Delivery schedules normalized. Complaints dropped. Meanwhile, Madison disappeared from the public eye. Rumors swirled about lawsuits, countersuits, and attempts to salvage her reputation. I paid them no mind. My focus was on the work. Every day, walking through the now familiar halls of Colton Industrial's plants, I was met with nods of respect from employees old and new. No resentment. No hostility. They knew why we were there. They knew what was at stake. And they trusted us to rebuild. By October, Colton Industrial Systems was back in the black for the first time in 18 months. Pinnacle Solutions' reputation soared alongside it. New contracts poured in, not just from Colton, but from companies across the region who had watched our quiet revolution unfold. Michael and I sat down one evening after work, sharing a bottle of scotch in his office. You realize, he said, we've done more than build a company. I nodded. We've built a movement. Because this wasn't just about one company's fall and another's rise. It was about proving that competence, loyalty, and quiet excellence still mattered in a world too often obsessed with flash and speed. It was about showing that resilience, not arrogance, built lasting legacies. And it was about honoring the truth that some fires, once lit, only burn brighter when the winds of change howl strongest. November crept in with a sharpness in the air that hinted at the approaching winter. But inside Pinnacle Solutions, the momentum felt anything but cold. It was electric. Our work with Colton Industrial Systems had stabilized their operations faster than even Richard had hoped. We had turned chaos into order, fear into focus. But that wasn't the end of the journey. It was only the beginning. Pinnacle's expansion now had a rhythm all its own. Michael Brennan and I structured new tiers of leadership to ensure the quality we had sworn to uphold didn't get diluted. Thomas became Director of Engineering. Elaine was promoted to Vice President of Project Operations. Luis took over as Head of Manufacturing Integration, and Jordan stepped into the role of chief systems architect. Each move was strategic. Each move was deliberate. I was building something that would last beyond any of us, an institution of excellence. Meanwhile, Colton Industrial Systems, under Richard's guidance and our operational support, was not just surviving, it was recovering its soul. Employee morale improved. Veteran workers returned. Clients that had quietly shifted their business elsewhere started knocking on the door again. But rebuilding the old was not enough for me. I had learned the hard way that true resilience required more than restoration. It demanded evolution. In mid-November, Michael and I met with the strategic advisory board we'd assembled, industry veterans, economists, and consultants whose judgment we trusted. We spent the entire day locked in a conference room, whiteboards filled with sketches, graphs, and arrows looping into contingency plans. The conclusion was clear: Pinnacle had the talent, the trust, and the opportunity to move beyond contract manufacturing. It was time to innovate. We decided to launch our own line of proprietary industrial products, small batch, high-precision components targeting industries hungry for reliability over cheapness, aerospace, medical devices, renewable energy. We called the new initiative Apex Precision. The name reflected our philosophy, the highest point of achievement. The decision wasn't without risk. Investing in research and development meant pulling resources from short-term revenue streams. But we agreed unanimously. We weren't here to be just another contractor. We were here to change the landscape. By December, the first prototypes were coming off the line. Thomas worked closely with a hand-picked team of engineers, designing components so robust, so precisely machined, that early testers were already lining up to place advance orders. We secured 2 patents by Christmas. The local business journal ran a feature story on U.S. Pinnacle Solutions, how a team of industry veterans is redefining American manufacturing. It was a proud moment, but I kept the team grounded. This is not the summit, I reminded them at the end of your company meeting. It's the base camp. The climb begins now. They understood. Because we hadn't come this far by chasing applause. We had come this far by doing the work others refused to do. Meanwhile, Richard Colton called me just before New Year's Eve. "Sam," he said, his voice tinged with emotion, "we're holding an employee appreciation event next week. I'd like you to attend." I hesitated. There was a time when Colton Industrial felt like home. But now, my allegiance was to something new. Still, Claire encouraged me to go. "Sometimes," she said, "it's important to see the bridges you didn't burn." So, reluctantly, I agreed. The event was held in Colton's largest manufacturing plant, transformed for the evening with banners, food stations, and a small stage. Familiar faces greeted me warmly. Old colleagues, machine operators, line supervisors, many of whom had stayed through the worst, hoping for better days. When Richard took the stage, he spoke briefly about the challenges of the past year, and the hard work of so many who had refused to let the company die. Then he surprised me. "Tonight," he said, "we recognize not just perseverance, but leadership. Leadership that saved us when we didn't know we needed saving." He called me to the stage. There, in front of hundreds of employees, Richard presented me with the company's first Legacy Award, a handcrafted plaque bearing a simple inscription, "For excellence beyond expectation." The applause was thunderous. For a moment, emotion caught in my throat. Not because I needed recognition, but because it meant that what we built, the standards, the sacrifices, had not been forgotten. They had endured. As January began, Pinnacle Solutions officially launched Apex Precision to the market. Orders poured in faster than we could have dreamed. By March, we expanded our facility by 30% and hired 40 new employees, carefully vetted for skill and culture fit. Michael and I agreed, no bloated bureaucracy. No politics. Just mission. Every success strengthened our foundation. Every new hire reinforced our principles. By April, we had distribution contracts signed with partners in Canada, Germany, and Australia. We weren't just a local success story anymore. We were an international contender. And all of it traced back to a simple, powerful truth. You can't manufacture resilience. You have to earn it. One choice at a time. One hard day at a time. One principled stand at a time. Late one evening, sitting alone in my office, I pulled out an old photo of the original Colton Industrial Systems team, back when Richard was young, when I was still new, when every face radiated purpose. I thought about Madison. About all the Madisons out there, people who mistook confidence for competence, ambition for wisdom. They rise fast. And they fall faster. Because in the end, only foundations built on truth endure. I smiled, placed the photo back in my drawer, and turned out the lights. Tomorrow, the climb would continue. Because we were just getting started. And we were climbing higher than anyone dared to imagine. Spring blossomed into a full, vibrant summer, and with it, the momentum behind Pinnacle Solutions and Apex Precision soared to new heights. Every week brought fresh milestones, new contracts, new partnerships, new breakthroughs. But through all the excitement, one thing remained constant: our foundation. Built on resilience. Tempered by principle. Fueled by the quiet fury of those who had once been cast aside. By June, we had doubled our workforce. Yet the culture we established remained intact, tight-knit, mission-focused, driven by competence rather than titles. Every hire went through rigorous vetting not just for skills, but for values. We weren't building a company. We were building a legacy. One evening, after a late-night design review, I walked the production floor alone. The rhythmic hum of machines created a symphony of productivity, a testament to everything we had fought to preserve. In the corner, a newly installed plaque caught my eye. It bore the words, "Built with integrity. Powered by experience. Driven by excellence." A lump formed in my throat. Not from sadness. From pride. Pride in a team that had refused to surrender to cynicism. Pride in a mission that had transcended ambition. Meanwhile, the manufacturing world took notice. Major trade publications featured us as the model for the new industrial age. Analysts who once dismissed us as just another spin-off now called us the gold standard for sustainable industrial growth. Even former competitors sought partnerships. But we remained selective. Because we understood, not all growth is good. Only the kind rooted in principle would endure. In August, Richard Colton officially retired, this time for good. Before stepping down, he invited me to a private dinner. Over steaks and aged whiskey, we reflected on the past 5 years, the fall, the rebuilding, the rise. "You taught me something I should have known all along," he said quietly. "What's that?" I asked. He smiled. "That true leadership isn't about being followed. It's about standing for something worth following." We raised our glasses in silent agreement. A torch had been passed. And it was burning brighter than ever. September brought a new opportunity, one that tested everything we had built. A global aerospace firm approached us with a monumental proposal, a joint venture to develop next-generation propulsion systems. High stakes. Massive investment. Tremendous risk. Michael, the board, and I deliberated for weeks. In the end, we said yes, but only under strict terms: complete design control, full operational autonomy, and an ironclad commitment to quality over cost-cutting. They agreed. Because by then, our reputation was undeniable. They needed us more than we needed them. And that, perhaps, was the sweetest victory of all. As the year drew to a close, Claire and I took a long-overdue vacation, a cabin deep in the Rockies, no cell service, no meetings, just mountain air and reflection. One evening, wrapped in a blanket on the porch, she turned to me. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" I nodded. "Every day." "Do you regret it?" I thought about the betrayal. The uncertainty. The nights lying awake, wondering if I had made the right choice. And I smiled. Not for a second. Because in losing what I thought was my career, I had found my purpose. In being underestimated, I had rediscovered my strength. In being cast aside, I had built something stronger than anyone, even me, had imagined. We returned in January to find Pinnacle stronger than ever. Apex precision had outpaced even our boldest forecasts. The aerospace project was ahead of schedule. New partnerships bloomed across industries. And yet, through it all, we remained true to our core. Resilient. Principled. Quietly unstoppable. Today, standing on the observation deck overlooking our expanded facilities, I watch a new generation of engineers, machinists, designers, and dreamers carry forward the work we began. They don't just build products. They build meaning. Every bolt tightened with care. Every design reviewed with integrity. Every promise kept. That's the real legacy. Not the awards. Not the headlines. Not even the profits. The real legacy is 1,000 small choices made right. Day after day. Year after year. Until one day, you look up and realize you've built something that no arrogance, no betrayal, no storm can tear down. Something etched in steel. Something that lasts. Forever. Thank you for being with us on The Hidden Truth. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, drop a comment, and be sure to subscribe. The secrets are waiting to be revealed. See you soon.